Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, November 8th, 2018 Watertown Board of Adjustment meeting. Okay, to roll call.
Hanson,
Here.
Culhane,
Here.
Dolly,
Here.
Dargett Johnson,
Here.
Stein,
Here.
Ford,
Here.
Oletsky,
Present.
Olson and Kays are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Joe. With that, I'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the October 4th, 2018 minutes. Can I get a motion, please?
I move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Second item on the agenda is an applicant for Robert Price, Price Laser Works.
The property we are looking at today is 316 13th Street Northeast. The owner applicant is Robert Priest, doing business as Priest Laser Works, 1776 LLC. The applicant seeks approval to operate a home-based business here, laser engraving, from his primary residence located in the R1 Single Family Residential District per 21-14035, contingent upon compliance with Chapter 2170 Home Occupations and Standards and Section 210202 2B7A through H, specific rules governing individual conditional uses. Staff finds that all public notice requirements have been met. Home occupations is a listed conditional use for the R1 Single Family Residential District per 21-14035. The definition of home occupation is any occupation which is clearly secondary to the main use of the premises as a dwelling and does not change the character thereof or have any exterior evidence of such secondary use other than a non-illuminated sign not exceeding 400 square inches in area. This occupation shall be carried on or conducted only by members of a family residing in the dwelling. The applicant submitted a floor plan and the attached site plan and a written request which reflect or do not reflect the requirements of the ordinance. This board must consider Section 210202 2B7A through H, which is specific rules governing individual conditional uses. This includes ingress and egress, off-street parking and loading, screening, buffering, signage, exterior lighting, required yards and open space, and general compatibility with the neighborhood. Chapter 2170 Home Occupations and Standards. Priests proposes to utilize approximately 482 square feet, which is 18% of the single-family dwelling for his laser engraving business. You will find a floor plan in your packet. He has signed his assurance to comply with Chapter 2170, and a small ordinance compliance sign is proposed to be attached to the exterior of the garage. Chapter 2163, off-street parking and loading requirements and engineering design standards. There is sufficient area for 3 legal off-street parking spaces. And to be counted as legal, the off-street parking space must meet minimum size and location standards and allow the exit of a vehicle without moving another vehicle. A minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces are required just for the single family that dwells there. This board may require more as a condition of secondary uses, such as home occupations. Chapter 2165, outside storage and display requirements for specific uses. The home occupations section 21702 supersedes 2165 for this secondary use. No outdoor storage of equipment or materials used in the home occupation shall be permitted, and no public display of goods shall be allowed on the premises except inside the principal building. Chapter 2173, landscape and lighting standards. The minimum tree requirement is that are to be located on the development site shall be 1 tree per 50 feet of frontage, and this is compliant. This board must determine if satisfactory provision and arrangement has been made concerning the chapters and sections I described. If generally endorsed, the board may consider any conditions of approval deemed necessary.
Thank you, Joe. Is the applicant here today?
Yes.
Could you go ahead and come forward and state your name for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Robert Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Question on the hours of operation. You have kind of standard business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Is
Yes.
this going to be more like a retail operation or a workshop where you're doing custom?
probably be more like a drop-off pickup type deal, you know, customizing in plaques, trophies, medical equipment. I mean, a lot of it will be not even having customer traffic. Some of it will be, you know, people dropping stuff off, but not necessarily more than one vehicle at a time. But it could be just about anything you can imagine that you could fit under something the size of this desk to be engraved.
Okay. And what about deliveries? Do you expect a large volume of deliveries coming in?
No, sir, not necessarily. I mean, occasionally UPS stuff maybe, but nothing more than any other normal residential area would see. Not
Okay.
like Christmas time every day or something, if you will.
And Joe, you did say that there was 3 legal off-street parking places?
Yes. You can see that here is the site plan that was submitted. It is a 2-car, 24-foot garage with parking to the side here.
Any additional questions from the board for Mr. Priest?
What's the size of the laser machine?
Yes, sir. It's basically, I would say, from this desktop surface here, a machine with an arm on it and a secondary arm that can rotate things. All together would probably take not much more workspace than this entire desktop here. And it's operated off of a laptop computer.
So your intention then is to store any materials, the machine and the operation of it and the materials will all be in the garage. Is that the plan?
Yes, sir. Along my inside wall of my garage, I basically have a bench top along the length of one side of the garage, and everything will be on about half of that space. And it's also a portable system, so a lot of my stuff may be like arts and crafts shows and things of that nature off-site, but that'll kind of be my home area of operation for local stuff, like, you know, gifts and, like I said, plaques, trophies, you know, people that want to do just basically any kind of custom engraving. And there's a few other places in town, I believe, that do it, but this is a newer, but it's an extensive laser that will do pretty deep engraving and all, you know, metal, wood, glass, things of that nature.
Joe, was there any objections or any comments from any of the neighbors?
No comments.
Is there a lot of noise that goes along with an engraving like this?
No, ma'am. I would
That
say
the neighbors might notice or something?
no. I mean, it would be about like turning your TV on with the static sound at probably 30% volume is about the noise it produces. No
What about-
hearing protection is even required to use it.
Okay,
or
what
vision.
about exhaust and stuff like that? Is there, like like you're saying you're doing wood and metal and
Yes,
stuff?
ma'am.
Where does that stuff go that
It's
you
going to
engrave
be,
out?
yes, ma'am. It's going to be filtered through a more or less a dryer hose, a type of hose. It's an aluminum hose, and through a double one of those hypoallergenic filters. So I mean, basically, you could stick your face right beside the exhaust and wouldn't even smell anything.
Well, I guess you kind of answered the one question, but does it, in terms of what it produces, but does it use any sort of chemicals or anything like that? It's just
No, sir.
electricity?
Just electricity, 110 voltage electricity.
Doesn't use
Standard.
like argon gas or anything?
No, no, sir. This is a 110 outlet.
Are there any fire hazards or anything with the engraving and the heat and electrical and wood and stuff?
No, ma'am, it doesn't even draw enough voltage to get like the wiring inside of the walls or anything hot or the cords to the,
Okay, thanks.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. I'll go ahead
Yes,
and
sir.
open the public hearing in case there's anybody else to speak on behalf or against. Please approach the microphone if you do. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Look to the board for action.
Make a motion to approve the variance request.
We have a motion on the table by Mr. Stein,
Second.
Second by Mr. Colhane. Any additional discussion by the board?
I'll only add that I think it's a conditional use,
It is a conditional use.
just so we're clear for the record.
Jill, I'll go ahead and ask for a roll call vote, please.
Dargis Johnson,
Yay.
Stein,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Colhane,
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to item 3 on the agenda, looks like another conditional use application for operation of a church.
This application is for 25 North Broadway. The applicant, which is Joe Ellison for Grace Bible Church, seeks to approval to operate a church in the C1 Community Commercial District for 21-2403-16 religious institutions, contingent upon compliance with the purpose of the C1 zone and 210202 2B7A through H specific rules governing individual conditional uses. Staff finds that all public notice requirements have been met. Religious institutions is a listed conditional use for the C1 Community Commercial District. The definition of religious institution is any building used for nonprofit purposes by an established religious organization holding either tax-exempt status under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code or under the state property tax law, where such building is primarily intended to be used as a place of worship. The term includes, but is not necessarily limited to, church, temple, synagogue, or mosque. The applicant submitted a floor plan showing the interior layout of stage, seating, classrooms, kitchen, and restrooms in the main and loft levels, and a site plan which reflects or does not reflect the requirements of the ordinance. This board must consider Section 210202B7A through H specific rules governing individual conditional uses, which includes ingress and egress of the property, off-street parking and loading, screening, buffering, signage, refuse, exterior lighting, required yards and open space, and general compatibility with the neighborhood. The purpose of the C1 zone should be considered. Chapter 2165, outside storage and display requirements for specific uses. Outside display was not indicated in the application. Chapter 2180, signs and outdoor advertising. Per the letter, a simple modification of the current signage is all that will be needed. And chapters 2163 and 73, off-street parking and loading requirements and landscape and lighting standards, the C1 district is exempt from these things, so that does not need to be considered. This board must determine if satisfactory provision and arrangement has been made concerning these chapters and sections, and for a religious institution to be operated at this location. If generally endorsed, the board may consider any conditions of approval deemed necessary.
Thank you, Joe. I'll open the public hearing here in just a second, but before I do, I just had one point of clarification, I guess, and we do have some language in our ordinance regarding alcoholic beverage sales within proximity of a church or school. But I believe because this is located in the C1 district, it's exempt from that provision, and so it's not going to impose a burden on the sale of alcohol at current or future businesses in the area.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing if anybody's here to speak on behalf or against.
State your name, please.
Hello, I'm Joe Ellison. I'm the pastor of Grace Bible Church. Does anybody have any questions or?
How many people do you have in your congregation currently?
We average about 65 people a Sunday for attendance.
So what's the plan on the parking as far as, if you get 65 people coming in downtown?
Correct. We've been driving by the Maholtz building on Sunday mornings just to see what it looks like on a Sunday mornings. And there's two public lots very are pretty close, and those are almost entirely empty, and most of the on-street parking is open as well on Sunday mornings. We do have Bible studies and things like that on Wednesdays, and that was a little more. There's more people parking there on Wednesday evenings, but our attendance is usually lower on Wednesdays as well. And in driving by on Wednesdays, the businesses on the, would that be Arrow Avenue there, just north, First Avenue, those are closed by the time we'd have our Wednesday things, and so there's parking available there. So in our looking at it, it didn't look like parking was going to be much of a problem, and it seemed that it would actually have opposite schedules as a lot of the other businesses in that neighborhood. So
Sure.
Weddings and funerals will take place there, though, during business hours of the businesses located along those streets?
yeah, at some point there's possibility for weddings. We're hoping no funerals, but that'd probably likely happen at some point. And the reality is that the space isn't. We'll be able to sit. 138 people is what we estimated in the building. So large weddings would not be able to be held there. And so that would be, and there wouldn't be much room for a reception as is right now. We only have plans for the ground level. There is a kind of a cool old dance hall up above, but that is not in our pocketbook to be able to do anything up there in the immediate future. But there is possibility for stuff like that, for an occasional wedding, for occasional funeral.
What do you plan to do with the windows up front?
We plan to leave those open, and I actually I've got another. I had a chance to bring a guy in and do some drafting with some plans, but yeah, we don't plan on changing anything with the windows up front. Behind that, we could have. I'd foresee us having like displays and stuff where people are driving by. They could have a little bit of literature on the church that they could read through the window, type of stuff.
Are you at all concerned that you are on Bar Road?
We love it.
You love that?
Yes.
Okay. Are you concerned about vandalism?
We would rather not, but we understand that's a necessary risk of being in this neighborhood, but we really desire to be where people are, and so that's we look at the neighborhood as a very big plus.
Now, as far as that apartment, I saw in your letter that you don't plan on renovating that upstairs, so is it just going to be vacant at this point?
It's been vacant for 20 years, and it would be quite expensive to be able to have it ready to rent. Okay. And so it was. We're a small church, and right now there's room to grow for us, which is exciting. But it's not in the on the horizon for us at all, and we estimate that would be $20,000-$30,000 easily to be able to get that ready. So we don't have any current plans for that.
On your drawing here, what do you mean by this section that says open dance hall? What's that about?
It's like 100-year-old dance hall upstairs. That's what it used to be. That's what it was built as. It's just a wide open old room with oak floors. It's really cool. It would be wonderful to be able to do something with it someday. It'd be very expensive to be able to get that room ready, and we just want a space where we can meet and worship together and be able to reach out to our community and be inside of our community. And so it's, we don't have any capabilities for anything beyond that right now.
Where do you presently meet? at?
We meet at Midwest Bible Camp, on Highway 20 out on your way to like City Park.
You are going to be doing remodeling on the main floor.
Correct, yes.
What are your plans to meet the state guidelines for asbestos inspections, et cetera, et cetera?
We had an inspection done, and we currently do meet the guidelines for that. The only place that they found asbestos was in the basement around the old steam pipes, but those were, I don't know, encapsulated or whatever, where as long as we don't touch them, they're supposed to be okay.
That's great. I do have some concern about, you know, the downtown businesses and a potential wedding, a funeral. Have you chatted with your neighbors about this, the parking situation, or have you communicated with them? Do they know you're possibly coming?
Is it Mike Cole that's neighbor? Is that the correct name? I visited him with one day waiting to get in the building, and he was really excited to have us, said we could use his dumpster if we wanted to. So, and then the other building next to us is, they also own the building we bought. So, I don't foresee that as being a problem. At a church our size, I wouldn't expect anything more than a wedding or a funeral a year. It's not a large church. And honestly, most people from our church, if they were going to have a wedding or going to have a funeral, would do it at a different place, just because it's not a very conducive place for a wedding or funeral. So we'd like to have that option for a small wedding or a small funeral, but the reality is there's way more conducive spaces for those in town besides this old hardware store. So,
Have you talked to any of the other people except the person you just mentioned, Sparky's Bar, or across the hairdresser, or any of those people?
I went and had sushi and talked to the lady over there, and she was very excited to have us as her neighbors. I haven't went and talked to the bar owners, but from our perspective, we want to be in an area where there's people, and so we like the idea of being on a street with some bars, but there's a lot of types of businesses on that street also, and so as a church, we delight ourselves in being good neighbors to whoever is our neighbor, and so I tried sushi for the first time, and we are looking forward to getting to know our neighbors and being good neighbors.
You know, parking's kind of a challenge with any of our businesses downtown, whether it's a bar or a church or a clothing store or law office. But you know, your earlier comment regarding the public parking that we have in the area is important. You know, that you're cognizant of it, and the patrons of your congregation are cognizant of it, and can be a little bit of a walk to get to where you're going, but we do have those facilities available down there. Thank you, Mr. Ellison. Anybody else from the public to speak on behalf or against? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing now. Look to the board for action.
I'll move to approve the variance request.
We have a motion by Mr. Stein,
I'll second that.
second by Oletsky. Any additional discussion?
I'm just curious, when the Light of the World Church opened on 10 East Kemp, what discussion took place? I wasn't around for that, on the parking situation, and have there been any complaints or issues with that, or has that all gone smoothly?
Are you talking about the church? Sorry, are you talking about the church that's across the street from, just down the street from the Click Gather, or?
No.
No, I just noticed that, I don't think it ever came in front of the board, Diana.
Or are you
It's a
talking?
church in the old Alvin's Music, the building with the round windows.
Yeah.
It's on the same block as the old, well, I date myself, F&M Bank building. Ken, do you know who I'm talking about? 10 East Kemp.
It's right across the street from the Chamber building.
Right. It's Light of the World Church, and it's been there for a year or two, and I just wondered, so I assumed it had a conditional use permit of some sort. If there had been any parking comments from any of the other businesses in the area.
I didn't even know a church existed there, so, and to my knowledge, they haven't come before us, but we've not received any complaints either, to my knowledge.
All right.
Then there's a church on the corner of, across the street from the Gather.
That's
on
the
same-
Episcopal Church.
Yeah, there's that one, and then there's another one farther down on West Camp, like right by that old restaurant and stuff.
I don't mean to be rude, but we're getting a little bit far afield.
You're right.
But my question is, with the churches that we have down there, have we had any complaints from the business owners in the area of those churches?
Nothing to my knowledge. We
Okay,
have that.
that's what I just was curious. We have some established down there, and if the business owners in that area have been happy with the situation, I think that's an important background piece of information.
Yeah, and I, just from a personal experience, I haven't noticed anything either, but just looking, a couple blocks to the south of here at the larger churches, when they do have large gatherings, they do take advantage of those same public parking areas.
Right.
So I would expect, the same to continue.
True.
Jill, ask for a vote, please.
Culhane,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes?
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Stein. Ford,
Yes.
Letsky,
Yes.
and Hanson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Good questions.
Thank you, Jill. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda is another conditional use application.
This property address is 812 West Kemp. The applicants are Doug and Heather Walsh, doing business as Innovative Adjusters. The applicants seek approval to operate a repossession business, office and storage, both indoor and outdoor facilities, with a dwelling unit in the C3 Highway Commercial District pursuant to 21-2803-18, other enumerated uses in the C3, or uses which in the opinion of the Board of Adjustment are of the same general character as those enumerated in the C3 district, contingent upon compliance with the purpose of the C3 zone and specific rules governing conditional uses. Staff findings, all public notice requirements have been met. Other uses which in the opinion of the Board of Adjustment are the same general character as those enumerated in the C3 district is a listed conditional use for the C3 Highway Commercial District per 21-2803-18. The applicants assert that the uses they are proposing, storage, indoor and outdoor facilities, with office and dwelling unit, are of the same in general character as C3 permitted uses, section 21-2802-6-11-12, and conditional uses 2803-9-12 and 16. If you turn over your staff report, those are highlighted. Number 6 is office building, 11 is automobile parking lot, 12 is farm machinery, semi-truck sales, 9 is apartments, 12 is contractor shops and storage yards. 16 is a warehouse in a completely enclosed building. And of course, 18 is what they are coming here before you by, which is other uses, which in the opinion of the board, may be of the same in general character. If I can just, staff notes that the dwelling unit proposed meets the specific definition of caretaker's residence. We are noting that it does meet that specific definition, which is a single-family dwelling unit which will be considered an accessory use to the primary business. The individual residing at this residence must own or be employed by the business. No home occupations will be allowed. Staff does not feel that it meets the definition of apartments, however, and caretaker's residence is neither a listed permitted nor conditional use in the C3 zone, but it is in the I1 and I2 zones. The applicant submitted a floor plan, site plan, and written request which reflect or do not reflect the requirements of the ordinance. This board must consider the specific rules governing individual conditional uses, which include ingress, egress, off-street parking and loading, screening, buffering, signage, refuse, exterior lighting, required yards and open space, and general compatibility with the area. Must also consider the purpose of the C3 zone. And Chapter 2163, off-street parking and loading requirements, there are 8 parking spaces shown on the site plan, and these must comply with parking setback and regulations. Chapter 2165, outside storage and display requirements for commercial uses. Outside storage in for commercial uses may be permitted if acceptable screening is provided and approved by the building official. Displays, merchandise which is offered for sale, rental, or lease may be displayed beyond the confines of the building. Chapter 2173, landscape and lighting standards. The property has 0 trees, and the minimum number of trees to be located on a redevelopment site or lot shall be 1 tree per 50 foot of frontage. Chapter 2180, signs and outdoor advertising. Signage was not addressed, but it must comply with ordinance regulations. This board must determine if satisfactory provision and arrangement has been made concerning 210202 2B7A through H in the chapters and sections described. If generally endorsed, the board may consider any conditions of approval deemed necessary.
Thank you, Joe. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If anybody's here to speak on behalf or against, please step forward.
Hello. My name is Doug Walsh. I'm the owner of Innovative Adjusters.
Afternoon, Mr. Walsh.
Afternoon.
Did have some questions regarding the proposed changes to the property. I see the site plan here and the proposed layout of the new building, but what I didn't see was where it addressed the screening as it pertains to the adjacent residential properties. So I guess my question was, what screening would be planned to remain in place that's existing or be added as part of this redevelopment?
As you can see on the computer there, our 6-foot fence is existing. That was just put up 2 years ago, so it's mostly new. Mm-hmm. We would consider extending the fence to the west as well.
What do you have across the west property line there? I believe that's also adjacent residential area.
There is a tree line there, or shrub line, trees, and then there's a residential house on that next lot.
And as far as the existing 6-foot fence that you have there around your storage lot, I assume that would be adjusted with the new building footprint, but it would be completely enclosed still.
Yes, yes. The new building basically would cover the old gas station.
Did you say you would be okay with extending that privacy fence to
Yeah.
where your trailers are sitting there now, those
Yep.
campers?
Yep. We actually, it was one of the things we probably really should do. It would give us more storage space because we're gonna take some space away when we put a bigger building up over where the gas station was.
I imagine that benefits, both you and the neighbors. You,
Yes.
because you got your site secured, and the neighbors, they don't have to see it, so.
Exactly.
As far as the boulevard requirements, now this property doesn't have the trees that it should to meet the boulevard requirements. Is that something you're willing to do, is
Absolutely.
plant the necessary trees?
The land has been in disrepair for quite some time. For us
Right.
finally taking it over, it's actually a plus, so.
It's kind of a shame to see that old building go, but I know it's not in,
It's in very
not in great
disrepair,
condition.
and if it's raining, you will get wet if you walk inside that building.
It's kind of a neat old building, though, really.
Have you had the asbestos inspection required before you demolish that building?
I will absolutely have that done. I haven't purchased the lot as of yet.
Do you have any access from the alley side, or do you do all your business off of the concreted front?
Everything comes off front.
And then the residence that you want to put there?
That'll be off the front and the right and the west side.
Is that just for you to stay at?
Yes.
24/7? I mean, is that going to be your permanent, is
I
that your
work
permanent
almost
home?
that. Yeah.
That-
I work quite a few hours.
But that will be your permanent
Yes.
home?
Much like a farmer, we work a lot of hours. I spoke to all of my adjacent neighbors across the street or adjacent to our property, and everyone is all for us getting rid of that gas station and putting a new building up. I had mentioned that we would be putting residents in this building, and no one has any issues with that whatsoever. My business only has customers that come in during regular business hours when we're releasing vehicles, so there's nothing as far as customers coming going at all hours of the night. It's just Monday through Friday, your normal 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 business hours.
So since the residence really isn't a listed or a conditional use, and you have regular business hours, I guess I have a problem with the residence that you're proposing in your new building.
We just work quite a few hours a day. And I could work 5 hours, and then I could be done for 2 hours, and then I could be working another 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, It just goes in spurts, and it's much like a farmer, it's really advantageous for us to be in one location.
When you're repossessing a vehicle or whatever, you're repossessing, that's at different hours of the day and night, is the way
Yes.
I understand it.
Yes, when we recover units, it is at all hours of the day. Generally, we're not out running in the dead hours of the night for the most part, but it does happen. Most of the time, our trucks are coming going, during the first and second shift hours, not so much as the third shift hours.
I guess what I think Diana's concerned about is that you'll get a hired guy and then he'll be living there.
No,
And that's,
I would be it.
So the caretaker definition that Jill had put up there, I think, addresses some of that. And it seems like in the case of this, this particular instance, that it would almost be better security both for the business and the neighborhood to have somebody that's there 24/7 monitoring. You think about vandalism and theft and that sort of criminal element in the neighborhood at a manned facility versus an unmanned. And
Okay, talking about that, that's a good question. Are you going to have lighting and stuff in the parking lot?
Yes, currently, on the back side of that building, we have, it's the night sensitive lights on the back. So you know, like about now, they'll come on and they'll stay open until dusk or till dawn.
But you have them so that they just shine down, they don't
Yeah, they
shine
don't-
out to the
they don't
neighbors or
shed out.
anything.
They don't,
And the neighbors are fine with your
I
lights
have
back there?
had no complaints. No
Okay.
complaints.
I think it's important too to point out from a conditional use standpoint that apartments are a conditional use in the C3, and while this is more of a mixed-use application, I don't think living, you know, it being a mixed residential and commercial area, I don't think an apartment-type operation is really outside of the scope of what the C3 zoning designation would allow for.
So I wonder why it's not listed then, when this zoning,
It's a good question, and I think it's,
guess
that
that's-
caretaker definition is something that we
Right.
should look at, especially, you know, we've talked a little bit about this kind of mixed-use definition over in the Willow Creek area and some other areas of town. Downtown, you know, we just looked at the Maholds building, and at one point in time, most commercial operations had a caretaker that lived on site. It seems like a lot of the discussion has been kind of swinging back towards that direction from a mixed-use capacity, so I wouldn't be opposed to looking at that.
I would just point out Powell's gas station, you know, Roger lived there for 40 years or whatever.
That motorcycle shop south on 81, don't they live upstairs from that shop?
I don't know that, I don't know.
Yes, they do.
Why is this even C3? I mean, if you look at the map, it looks like it's kind of goofy. Because it's surrounded by R2A. Because C3 is traditionally 212 and 20, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
traditionally highway, commercial, and we have talked a little bit about that commercial designation. Is it the most appropriate commercial designation? Clearly, it's a commercial district because we've had longstanding commercial operations there, but is it really, you know, C3? But, you know, even if it wasn't C3, though, I think that mixed residential commercial operation is really in the principal nature of the area.
agreed.
Neighborhood use and change.
Would, I don't know if you want any staff to speak to the comp plan and what that area is supposed to go to?
Did you want to speak to it, Joe?
that'd be great.
We have the urban planner here, and do you have anything
Put
to
her on
say
the
about
spot
it,
already.
Brandy? Well, I was just gonna say, I think this area is supposed to be driven a little more towards commercial, isn't it, along Kemp Avenue here? We're hoping that things kinda residential fades out a little and just anybody, I don't know if anybody has any comments to that or not, but.
I think you bring up a good point, Jill, in reference to the comprehensive land use plan. I personally have not reviewed it in relation to this application or this section of C3 zoning in the community. But given the nature of what's out there now, I can see why it is zoned C3. And somewhat relative close proximity to the thoroughfare C3 that we see a little bit to the west here. That's probably why the forefathers decided to zone it the way they did back when any last modifications to the zoning map in this area were made.
Also, with it being zoned R2A as the residential, that's the older neighborhood where these businesses, Kemp is a minor collector, so these commercial businesses popped up along that, but those neighborhoods were existing. So it would be something there where you would assume that it would turn over as commercial property.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there anybody else in the public that would wish to make a comment at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Look for a motion from the board.
I would make a motion to approve with the fence continued to the west and the trees. I think that's already going to be a factor, so.
Thank you, Rhonda. I
Motion
have
to
a
approve.
motion on the table.
Second.
Second by Mr. Colhane. Any additional discussion?
I would like to make sure that the apartment is maintained as the owner's dwelling and not as a hired person. Isn't that what we talked about?
It looks to me like the caretaker definition allows for an employee to live there though, right? Or did I misread that? It's
Yeah,
the owner or the
owner
employee.
or an employee, yes,
So
that's
All right.
true.
under statute, it's gotta be the owner or the,
Or an employee? All right, but not as a rental unit, one of those, a business-related person. All right,
Correct.
very good.
And for the record, I think that is something that we should, take up as part of a plan commission action in the future so that we can evaluate adding that as a conditional use. Any additional discussion? Ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. Dolly?
Yes.
Dargis Johnson?
Yes.
Stein? Ford?
Yes.
Oletsky?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Culhane?
yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
We clarify Mr. Stein's vote. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, item 5 on the agenda is a discussion on the bylaws.
Matt, would you like to make a comment on that, or?
Doesn't appear on my agenda.
Oh.
Appears to be open public comment on my agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you looking at the,
The plan, okay, well, the published agenda does not include that.
This sent agenda is probably still included it because we're gonna discuss that on Plan Commission.
Okay, so that's not on the agenda for Board of Adjustment. We'll move
No.
on to item 5, open public comment participants. If there's anybody to speak on behalf to the Board of Adjustment that hasn't had a chance to speak here today, now is the time to do so. If you're here for the Plan Commission meeting, we'll be having that next. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close that period and move on to old business. Any old business, Joe?
no old business?
No old business. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. All right, thank you. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, November 8th, 2018 Watertown City Plan Commission meeting. Can I get a roll call?
Hanson,
Here.
Colhane.
Present.
Dolly.
Here.
Dargits Johnson.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Oletsky.
Present.
And Olson and Kays are absent. We have a quorum.
First item on the agenda is invitation for public comment participants submittal. We'll have a time later on in the agenda for you to come forth and speak if it's not something that's already on the agenda, so watch for that towards the end. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I'm going to make an amendment to the agenda.
Okay?
If we can remove item 7, which is just a discussion of the rezone initiation from C3 to R4.
Okay.
And then also item number 9, which is the acceptance of the 2019 Board of Adjustment Plan Commission meeting schedule. We're going to postpone it. We're going to take a little deeper look at that.
Okay. Any other changes?
Nope.
Can we get a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'd make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda's approved. Item 3 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 20th, 2018 meeting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Moving on to item 4, replat. Brandy?
Yep, so in front of you guys is the replat of lots 6 through 9A of CAC's first edition. This is out just north of Lake Pelican. So what this is doing, it's creating one extra lot. It's zoned R2, which is single-family attached residential district, and they are all conforming to the R2, to that zoning designation for size and lot frontage, and it's just adding an extra lot. The reason that we're bringing it in front of you guys, it would just be an administrative, administrative plat, but we are resetting the timeline for the development agreement to get some outstanding obligations completed.
Are the new lots the 30th Street that goes south there, off of 17th?
On 36th Street West here, they are to the east, and so they're the bolded boundary lines there. So it's creating one extra lot. They were just a little larger, so I think just for marketing wise.
So what you're saying is you're asking to change this, but then you're going to ask that the development streets or whatever you've been waiting for to get done.
Yeah.
In lieu of this, I mean.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so then with this, when we record this, we'll record the addendum to the development agreement, which was recorded on May 20th of 2008. So there are still outstanding obligations, so then this is just resetting that, saying that if we're gonna replat this, then those things need to be done within 2 years, which is our standard time. Just, it's been going on since, it should have been completed in 2013.
So the addendum says within 12 years, but that's based upon the original date. So it's 2 years from now, essentially.
Yep, yeah, so it's even, not exactly 2 years, like a year and a half for building season.
Have they started 36th Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so how they've been going about it, when they pull a building permit, then they do pave down to that site because that is a requirement. So then just, they have some fill to bring in. It is within the 100-year floodplain. So they're going to do that work and then are going to get the infrastructure improvements completed.
Any additional questions from the board? Discussion? Brandy, you're just looking for a recommendation from us or a motion to move it forward?
Yep, we'll do a motion of recommendation.
I think it's good, and I appreciate bringing it to us and allowing us to update that addendum. I think the time frame is appropriate to get that work done and bring it up to the standards before turning it over to the city. Any additional discussion? Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
Mr. Culhane is scrutinizing the plans quite
Well,
extensively.
I was just looking at the lot widths and making sure that the addition of the extra lot there's no issue or anything like that. They were big lots to
It
start
looks
with.
like they're good-sized lots, yeah.
I'll make a motion to, recommend the action.
Sounds good. We have a motion to approve the addendum as presented.
I'll second.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item 5 on the agenda is a rezone of the Watertown Development Company addition. Can you walk us through that, Randy?
Yep. So we've talked about this before at these meetings, about rezoning these properties that are shown on the exhibit, which are lots 1 through 3 in Watertown Development Edition, Watertown Development Company Edition. So we're rezoning from I-2, which is heavy industrial, to I-1, which is light industrial. And as you can see on the request for action, for each lot, it does bring them into somewhat more of conformance, although not one lot does meet complete conformity with rezoning. But I mean, between size requirement of the lot size and then different setbacks, it does help the cause. Right now, with them being zoned I-2 heavy industrial, they are supposed to be 220,000 square feet, and they, as you can see, are around the 30,000. And then one is 1 acre. Adjacent zoning, if you guys look at the map there, there's multi-family residential to the north, and then more light industrial to the east, and then heavy industrial to the west. And then the current uses of these properties that we're looking at rezoning are within, they're not heavy industrial uses.
Thank you, Brandy. For this one, I believe we have a public hearing, so I'm going to open that up right now if anybody's here to speak on behalf or against.
What are the adjacent, right to the south, or to the west of that? Is that Watertown Box, or which business is that one?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
I'm the president of Watertown Cheer and Dance Association. We met about a month ago. I understand that the request for the rezoning of this was to keep the existing gym there and change the verbiage of the ordinance or change the ordinance altogether. Please look at it more than just the business, but look at the safety of the children for the Watertown community and from surrounding areas. 6-7 months ago, we were a part of that gym, and we were there until Dakota Finishing had their fire/explosion while kids were in the building across the street. That is one of the reasons why we have gone through so much in the last 7 months, and we feared the safety of our kids. So that is like the main reasons why we chose to left that part of town, and I feel like there's still a lot of kids there and families there that will be affected if that is rezoned and the gym can stay there.
I would just like to point out that this action does not address that issue. This action simply rezones this to I-1. That change in the language to the conditional use will likely come forward at a future date, but this action does not address that concern.
And currently, how ordinance is written, it is not allowed. And that's a separate issue, that there's a certain timeline for resolving that. But yeah, what we're looking at right now is just the land aside that is I-1 zoning appropriate.
Yeah, that's an important note. Thank you for bringing that up and clarifying that it is two separate actions.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but does this not open the door for the gym to be allowed to stay if it gets rezoned?
There would be another public hearing for the ordinance amendment. So no matter what, if this is the first step to them trying to stay, they would still have to come back, and then we'd have another public hearing for the ordinance amendment.
To add it as a conditional use in that zone.
Yeah, or to change the definition of commercial recreational facility. Because right now, as it's written, it needs adult or children or adults 14 years of age or older. I don't know, adolescents, I don't know. People.
I think, if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
speak briefly on this. I think it's important to clarify what we're trying to summarize here is that the current non-conforming use under the I-2 zoning district will still continue to be a non-conforming use under any rezone of this property as an I-1 zoning district. Until a point in time this board were to consider any hypothetical amendment that may come in the future.
Thank you. Chip, did you have something to add? You looked like you might. No. He's hiding back there.
I'm Rex Gerber, one of the co-owners of the land in question here, of two of the lots on the land anyway that are in question for the zoning. Far as on our end, the person in that they're speaking of trying to stay, their lease is actually done with us April 1st, and we have another business that is currently looking at possibly buying the property from us, is part of the reason we wanted to move forward with this.
You know, looking at this purely on a land use and what's, you know, appropriate, clearly those lots are deficient from the standpoint of what the requirements are to meet I-2. And I know that we're closer, much closer to the I-1 requirements, though we're still deficient in some capacities. There's multiple lots there, and it looks like we have multiple lot owners. But is there any potential where lot ownership is the same to consolidate into fully compliant I-1 lots? Or are we always going to be in a situation due to the ownership where we can't meet those requirements?
We actually have a contract to sign that when it comes up for sale, if that's the one in question.
Yeah, and that, yeah, go ahead.
The first lot, 1800 4th Avenue there, that's DK Diesel, I'm current co-owner of that. The lot right to the south, there's actually a contract signed, and I believe there is I don't remember what it's called, I don't know if it's an easement signed with the city. When we added onto that property years ago, we built within such a close radius of the property line. There's a contract with the current owners, Marla Stagel. When that lot comes up for sale or upon her death, that actually has to be combined with the DK Diesel lot. I don't know if that smaller one is the one that we're in question of or not.
Yeah, primarily, and so at that time, we could look at either a replat of that or a development lot agreement or something to tie
I believe
those
it was
two
a
together.
replat is what the city had us sign, because we actually had a contract signed. It's been 10, 12 years ago that was signed anyway, but when they decide to sell it or upon John and Marlis's passing is when it comes up for sale, so.
And then lot 3, the farthest south one, who's the owner on that lot?
Heinrich, right? Or
Hesco's operating in there.
Hesco, but yeah, Brad Heinrich signed as an agent.
And
Yeah,
it
that's
looks
Hesco.
like it doesn't quite meet the requirements from a lot area, but it's only by 400 some square feet.
Right.
So it's pretty close already. It was mainly that smaller lot that I was concerned with because it was quite a bit under.
Right, and there might be opportunity there with that railroad property too, about combining that kind of as Rex did with East Side Investments and replatted that. And added that to that.
Who's owner of that railroad plat right now?
Oh.
State is. A large one.
I think it's the city, isn't it?
It says Hesco.
Okay.
So it might already be conforming. Yeah, same landowner.
So assuming assuming they own that, there probably already is a development lot agreement or something tying those two together.
Yeah.
Isn't it two different legal descriptions?
They are, so and they have not replatted it. And that would be something where if they were looking at expanding this easement here, they would probably do something similar as what we did with that replat of Rex's property and then moved it to the south boundary. But it appears they are under ownership of the same property. Same property owner for these two lots that are just split by that easement.
I don't think I have any additional questions. Was there anybody else from the public that wanted to speak before we close the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I'll look to the board for Plan Commission recommendation. And this being, again, just to reiterate, at this point in time, we're simply looking at the zoning designation for these lots, and not any conditional use or future revision of said conditional use.
I'd make a motion to approve the rezoning.
1 second, Matt. Is there any way that in the legal description, because of this property not being included, that we could add that? Could we make a motion to add that going forward to city council?
Add that south chunk, you're saying?
Yeah. Amend the petition?
I don't know the answer to that, whether it can be amended at the meeting or not.
Are you talking about changing the legal description? That's gotta be replotted, doesn't it?
I think she's saying, because right now we're leaving out that chunk south, leaving that as I-2, but sounds like it can be.
Oh, I see what you,
It's-
south of the railroad section?
No, south of the chunk that's coming into as I-1, right?
See, they own that railroad section too.
I suppose that could be something, though, that they could do a rezone upon a replat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they do bring a replat to us, we can do it as one.
Yeah.
Or it'd be two actions, but probably.
Yep, it would be two separate actions, but then, yeah, just to do it, because otherwise, with that easement and everything, it would get a little messy with legal, so we can require that.
Why wasn't it included up until now?
I don't know.
Oh, well, okay. No, it was just, that's fine, it was just an oversight? Is that all it was?
Yeah.
Well, it's not
Oh,
contiguous with the other lots either, but
Okay.
I think that's actually a right-of-way that's separates them, not a railroad.
Okay.
If that touches the street, it almost looks like it's an alley or something across there.
Yeah, I'd recommend leaving it as is for now. As the action
Yeah.
was proposed.
Sounds good.
So we do have that motion on the table to move forward as presented by Mr. Hanson.
We still need a second?
We still need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Colhane. Is there any additional discussion?
I'm gonna channel my inner Todd Kays real briefly. We have a general lack of I-2 in Watertown, right? I mean, isn't that the issue? But I don't, given its border to I-1 and the fact that these lots would be non-conforming, I don't really see an issue, but I don't know what he would say.
Todd did voice his opinion, and I'll channel that. He didn't have an issue with rezoning these because they are non-conforming as I-2 anyway. And what I would say as far as zoning, we do have areas on the perimeter of town that are not necessarily zoned I-2 right now, but they're large enough and have the opportunity to be rezoned to I-2 if that use is needed.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is, you know, these smaller lots aren't currently meeting the requirements for I-2. And while we do need additional I-2, there are areas in the comprehensive land use plan that we're targeting for that industrial development. So where we can bring the lots into compliance, or at least much closer into compliance, I think we should be moving forward with that.
Yep.
Any additional discussion? I'll ask for a vote, please.
Do you want a roll call vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Hanson,
Yes.
Colhane,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Dargits Johnson,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Oletsky.
Motion passes. Item 6 on the agenda is a discussion of the Plan Commission members' alternates participation.
Yes, so this is something that we've been kind of wavering on back and forth on what we should do, and it's really up to the board as far as, and this was what was on the Board of Adjustment agenda as bylaw discussion, and this is something that we hope to work on over the winter and to get some policies in place. And then, but really it's up to you guys as far as when we have a quorum for the Board of Adjustment or for Plan Commission, if the alternates are not needed, do we want to allow them to be in part of discussion? And I can just kind of open it up with that, and if anybody wants to take it from there. And I do have Todd's take too, that he did let me know what his views were.
So go ahead and channel your inner Todd
So,
again.
where's my nameplate? He did not, so for Board of Adjustment, he would like to see it that the alternates don't participate, just so it doesn't add confusion to who's addressing and who's voting. I mean, who's addressing discussion and who's voting. And then for Plan Commission, he didn't care. He thought that if there was just some distinction where maybe we separated, if there's extra alternates, if they weren't needed for voting, that then there would just be that distinction, but that they could still be involved with discussion. So, and I see the point with the Board of Adjustment, with that being a quasi-judicial board, just so there's no confusion, and that only voting members are the ones participating in discussion and asking the questions. But we also, Board of Adjustment is first before Plan Commission, so if we're allowing, if the alternates, and we encourage them to come and participate and learn, so, and to be a part of the discussion. So if we would flip-flop, where Plan Commission would be first, and then everybody that was here that could show up could participate. And then if Board of Adjustment was just the quorum of the 7 members. You need, what, 5 for variances and 4 for conditional uses? For a quorum, 5 all around? Todd just said it changed. You did? Yeah, I guess. So.
Can I speak?
Yep,
Absolutely.
take it
I'm
away.
not quite sure where we are with speaking and not. As an alternate, I don't think on the Board of Adjustment, I personally don't think, if I were not a voting member, I should be asking questions. I would see it as, if I were an alternate and not needed for the quorum to vote, I would not sit here. I would sit in the audience if I choose to remain and participate as any other audience member was allowed to participate. If you're sitting here, I don't care what kind of bylaws we have, there are people that are going to be confused, no matter what. And so I would see it for both the Board of Adjustment and the Plan Commission. An alternate who is not voting would not be sitting at this table. They would move to the audience and then be an audience participant, just as any other citizen would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good point.
You know, subject to the chairman saying you
Yeah.
can speak, you can't speak, you're in order, you're out of order, whatever, because you aren't sitting on the board at that time. You're not.
Right.
I think you should still have a right to speak, as any other audience member would be allowed to speak.
Yeah, during the public hearing, anybody can speak from the public. So,
Right.
I mean,
And, but
that
then
makes
when there was a
sense.
motion and it was under board discussion, a non-voting alternate would not participate in that. And they would not be sitting here, so they would be out in the audience and have done their part, should they choose to participate as an audience member, but
Right. And there would be no influence then too, or
No.
nobody could feel that there was influence.
no. I think a separation, a distinct separation needs to take place, and that would be a physical separation of the alternate who is not voting, moving away from here, physically removing themselves from the board activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, it could lead to confusion, not even just to the public, but also to the members that are sitting up here. When you have more people and some are voting and some are not.
Right, because as an alternate, you slip in and out of voting, and, if we could get confused, certainly the public could become confused too.
I don't think you'd want to change the order, though. Wouldn't you want to keep the Board of Adjustment first?
Oh,
I would prefer to keep the Board of Adjustment first. I mean, that's often when you have the most people from the public are here on behalf of the Board of Adjustment, and
Yeah, that was
the
just
Plan Commission meetings can be fairly long sometimes.
Yeah. That was just a thought, if we wanted to make things different for like Board of Adjustment and Plan Commission and participation of the alternates, just so then we weren't saying you can participate in Plan Commission, but you can't in Board of Adjustment. But I do like the idea of just keeping it consistent. And then, just having the 7 members, and when an alternate can step in for somebody that cannot be present, then to do that.
So would the alternate step in if there are 5 of us and one of the alternates show up? Do they still participate, or do we just stick with the 5?
Yes. You could, if there's not if not all the voting members are present, an alternate can step into that role, whether or not there's already a quorum.
Like what we did tonight.
Yep.
I think the simpler the better. No need to add a needless if, ands, what ifs, just straightforward, simple declarative sentences. This is the way it is.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, the discussion kind of started too when we're trying to figure out how we could better include, the alternates, and we value your time and commitment to this, and I know it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes if you don't know that you're going to be needed or not. So it'd be nice to include you more times than not, but with the confusion aspect of it too, I think it does make it a little bit more clean to do it that way.
Right. I think we're here to serve the public, and when I agreed to be an alternate, I understood that there would be times I would come and not be needed, but that was part of my agreement. I didn't go into that without having accepted that myself, and I'm willing, certainly, to continue to participate in that manner.
Good deal.
And I would just say, to value everybody's time, I think that there already is the expectation that full-time members contact Jill or Brandy if they can't be at the meeting, so we can be sure to have alternates here, or let you know that you won't be needed if
Absolutely.
you choose not to come too, so.
Do you guys get weekly calls at all about if you're needed or not?
I never have.
Would you appreciate getting just a call to say, hey, you'll be acting as a member, or that you're not needed in case you have other obligations that you, but because if you have other obligations, then you're not required to be here either.
Or a text or an email is fine, but then again, you never know if someone has a car accident on the way here, or someone's child is hospitalized. These, life happens.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, I think, for anyone to say you're not going to be needed, and then all of a sudden You know, you need to round someone up. So for me, if I'm around, I come. If I'm in town, I come. So, but that's just me. I'm retired. I don't have a lot of outside obligations, and that's, for someone who's working, that's a totally different circumstance.
I just do the homework, whether I'm needed or not. Drive by, look at the property, you know, do my homework. And now with the planning, I have no problem doing that too, but that's why you always see me sitting over there till I find out, because if I'm not needed, I'm out of here.
I mean, that part is working, and I have contacted Jill once or twice to say, you know, what's going on if I had a conflict. So it's a two-way communication street. We can be proactive as well as you guys being proactive.
You know, that's one thing maybe that we should look at is proactive with our full-time members as well, because we typically have more of a, I don't know what the word is. We're not positively going out and checking that everybody's going to be here. We just rely on, if you're not going to be here, to make a message to us. And
I'd like to make 2 comments to this. First of all, we'd really like to encourage alternates to be here, whether they're needed or not, because things can get tabled, and you might be needed the next time. Need to know what's going on. It's a learning thing. It's a, you know, so we highly encourage whatever your decision here to attend, regardless of you're voting or not. And the other thing is, in the past, pretty far past now, we used to contact members because we weren't getting contacted and people just weren't showing up, and it was a nightmare. Just an absolute nightmare. People, you know, they'd say, well, I could, you're calling, okay, so-and-so's not, well, I could, but you know, and it was back and forth, and it drove us crazy. But, so that's why we put on there that we really need to be contacted if you can't show.
And I know when somebody is going to be gone, you guys go through a lot of legwork of making those phone calls and sending emails and text messages, whatever you need to ensure that we do have enough participants. So we definitely appreciate all the work that staff does on our behalf as well.
I mean, because they are scheduled a year in advance, and so, you know, it'd be nice not to babysit that, but.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody on the same page? I think so. Sounds like it.
Correct.
Good.
7 members are voting and participating in discussion.
Yeah, and any non-voting members would not be sitting at the table up here.
Yep.
They could participate from, you know, the audience perspective in public hearing, during open public hearing, but other than that, it'll be voting members only.
Yep.
So that took care of your winter study.
Yeah, we'll create the bylaws.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, so even though we're not making a change here, because my interpretation is that the way you've just decided to go forward is technically what it says currently, so I don't think there needs to be any change to the ordinance or a bylaw by itself, but I don't think that negates the need for bylaws, and so that is something that's coming down the pipe, I think, so.
Good.
All right, that'll take care of that discussion item.
Okay.
And there's
then
one
we,
more.
We had one more, so item 8 is discussion of the Joint Plan Commission and Park Board meeting.
So this was brought up by the park board. They are interested in meeting with, and so we're thinking 3 park board members and 3 plan commission members to meet and discuss the future of park planning as far as the comprehensive land use plan goes, and as we work on updating that. We already did discuss the park portion of the comp plan, but we could go back and study it further with them, so then their input is also a part of our update.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, particularly because we had a lot of feedback on the parks portion of it and some recommendations for some very, I say, firm language in there regarding parks and, you know, how we develop them. So I think it's definitely appropriate that the 2 boards get together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so we're on the same page.
Exactly.
Because we've kind of, I mean, for the last year, it's been not necessarily that way. So if we, at least that we have everyone's idea of how you want to go forward in planning for the parks. And we can all be on the same page, then we'll just get that in writing and updated in the comp plan.
That sounds like an awesome idea. I don't want to take anybody's spot if anybody's jumping to get onto that, but I'd gladly sit in on that. We'll be one of the 3 or 4
Sounds
people.
good. Yeah, that was my next question, is if anybody is interested, let me know. And, or like, if you guys want to just decide tonight, and then I can send out a poll to see your availability.
And maybe just to clarify, Brandy, I think we were thinking 3 members from each of those boards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can an alternate be on that?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Would you be interested?
I would be interested, yes.
Sounds good.
And
Yes, I would be interested.
All right.
And I am as well, Brandy, so I think, with the volunteers that we have here today, it sounds like we have, enough participants to move forward with
Okay.
that, so.
Sounds good, yeah, so just look out for that poll, and we'll find out a time to meet, and then I will also reach out and see which park board member, I think they had an idea of which park board members were interested too, but it was initiated by them that they had discussed that they'd like to meet, so we will do that.
Perfect. Thanks, Brandy. Moving on to item 10 is open public comment, participant submittal, or open public comment period. If you would like to speak to the board, now would be the time to do so. Seeing none, I'll move on to new business.
None,
No new business, any old business?
none that I have.
Any need for executive session?
Nope.
Entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.